Good evening, good morning, good day, everyone. Welcome to our first Steam Exchange AMA of 2023. We hope you all are doing well and have had a positive and healthy start to the new year. First off, thank you all for being here with us today. It is 5:05 p.m. on Friday, the 13th, 2023. My name is Virav Chapkar. I am the VP of Operations. And with us today, we have Neville Devecha and Chris Beckford, co-CEOs and Head of Operations and Infrastructure, respectively. Since we last spoke, there's been a lot that's happened behind the scenes in terms of overall readiness. We know a lot of you have been looking forward to this session, and we've got a robust agenda lined up for you all today. This includes 2 demos, briefly touching upon our Blockchain Explorer, as well as our trading interface, something you're definitely going to want to keep your eyes peeled for. And for those of you that have been with us since the beginning, you know this, but it's worth repeating. At Steam Exchange, one of our core guiding principles has always been to look ahead and remain innovative. And we'll be touching upon that with a few discussion points at a high level. We will be discussing how things have been progressing, both with existing initiatives and products, as well as new opportunities and technology that we see value in. Just as a general housekeeping note in regards to this AMA, we will have an open mic Q&A session at the end. For those of you that are unable to ask a question over call, please feel free to funnel in questions to me via messages or any of our admin team, and we will do our best to get them answered. Once again, thank you all for tuning in. I will now pass over the virtual mic to Neville to take us through updates across the operations silo.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Virav. So again, everybody, welcome to the AMA. Thank you for taking the time of your day to join us. So I do want to start the AMA with the roadmap, phase 2. So we teased a little bit in the chat with an image first of a lock. And then we asked people what it was, and people gave some answers, and a lot of you guys were very close. And then we dropped the video of what it actually entailed. So I did want to touch a little bit about why we think that this particular initiative is advantageous, not just for us, but also for the crypto space in general. So end-to-end blockchain level data encryption. So at the moment, just giving an example of what end-to-end encryption is, for those of you who don't know, say you use something like WhatsApp Messenger. When you send a message, the receiving end receives that message, but when you send it, it's sent with a token. And when they receive it, they have a matching token on the other end, and it's all done through servers. So we want to take that concept and put it onto the blockchain. What that's going to accomplish for us is going to allow us to put data on the blockchain that no one would ever be able to see except its intended audiences. So at the moment, we have transactions going through the blockchain. You can see those transactions. You can look at the hashes. You can look at the way the transaction was built and put together, and then how it was also sent across the chain, where it was validated, how it was validated, etc. So we want to develop a technology that encrypts that particular data, and the concept behind it and the idea behind it is that we can start using that technology to send across data, images, documents, emails, messages, etc., etc. Some examples of how this technology would work or why it would be beneficial in both the private sector and the public sector. We can start with private sector. Imagine going into work, logging into your workstation for the first time in the morning, and all your data decrypts for the day, all your work documents, all your meeting invites, your emails, et cetera, and then whenever you lock your workstation and step away, all your data is then re-encrypted onto the blockchain because your token is no longer active, and no one has access to that data except its intended audiences. So think about all the attacks on infrastructure at workplaces, phishing attacks, scam emails, et cetera. An employee or one of your colleagues open an email, and then they give or grant access to an attacker to their workstation. That attacker now has access to their entire workstation, the documentation, and any infrastructure that particular employee would have access to. What we're trying to do, or one of the concepts behind this, or examples of the applications, is to encrypt that data. So even if one of your colleagues makes a mistake of accepting a phishing attack, once they lock their workstation, that attacker no longer has access to that data. Most attacks, based on history, takes place when the business is not in operation. So typically overnight, very rarely will you see attacks take place during the day, during actual business hours. So the concept applies. An example of how this concept would apply to the public sector, and this is something that we're going to be pushing for first with our proof of concept, is in the medical industry. So we're looking at and thinking of a way to implement this concept into putting medical records onto the blockchain. So this idea came to us when all of us have children in the group except Viraf, but I'm sure one day he will. So all of us have medical records for our children. A lot of us have specialists, allergists, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes it gets pretty difficult when we go to this doctor and they ask for the history on our children, and we go to this hospital and they ask for history on our children. So we're looking at ways to centralize that data for the medical industry so that, connected to a wallet, for example, the medical facility would be able to pull up the medical records from our Rails network blockchain using an authorization token. So we set ourselves up for success in this particular aspect because on Rails network, in order to deploy a smart contract, you need an authorization token. So using a similar concept, we would give that authorization token to the intended audience of that data, and that person would be able to pull up those records anywhere in the world as long as they have access to the internet. Just a couple of ideas that we have floating around regarding this technology and why we think it's important. It's definitely something that's very, very infant in its idea and its concept stage. But what we've done anyways, just to get a little bit ahead of the curve, is start our initial meetings, right? So we have our network that we built through developing our roadmap phase 1. We have the Ministry of Ontario Economic Growth Sector, and that's who we tap first. So that our particular network there is already working with their network to see who a good partner would be for us to test out this concept and to build it out. So a proof of concept for this particular, venture would be a tokenized project on the Rails network. The token itself would fund any on-chain fees and gas for the public sector, because that's what we're going for first. The proof of concept will first be used to demonstrate any generic data for, John Doe's. We're not going to use real data and real medical records. We'll build the technology, we'll test it out with fake data. And then once we're confident in the technology, we'll then start tapping the shoulders of our family doctors, for example, and then any networks that we have in the medical industry to see if we can test this out live and with real people. And then from there, we'll start, shilling this idea to the public health and see if we can get adoption for this. As far as security goes for this, like I mentioned earlier, our on-chain security will protect this data. We already have authorization token and functions for deploying smart contracts and also reading smart contract data and transaction data. So we would just have to evolve that and take it one step further to create a second type of authorization token for any intended audience to view this data on the blockchain. So I just want to give you guys some more information on what the idea and the concept was behind Roadmap Phase 2. It's very high level at the moment. We will get more granular with it as we start developing partnerships for it and as we start developing the actual technology behind it. I'll move on now to what you see on the screen. So all of you have seen this in some form or fashion. This is the latest version of our platform. So before, we had just light mode and there's a lot of bugs. There's still some bugs. And we might run into one as I demonstrate this, but what I want to do is demonstrate actual trading. So just to show that we're making some progress on this, and the team in Ukraine are working very hard on pushing this for us as well. And we'll get more into that with Chris and his update in a minute. But I just want to put through a couple of trades to show you guys what it looks like. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put together some instructions on how to obtain testnet currency so you can test it for yourself. So the first thing is a swap. So you can see here that I want USDT. I'm going to buy some USDT. I'm not going to use all that ETH. I'm going to use maybe less of it so we can demonstrate other parts. Okay, let's go this way instead. We're going to go straight to the trading platform. So I'm going to transfer some of my ETH or all my ETH to my advanced trading wallet. And then I'm going to go ahead and you can now see that I have nothing in my primary wallet and all of it is now in my advanced trading wallet. I'm going to launch the trading module. And then I'm going to start putting in some trades. So I'm going to sell some of my ETH for USDT. You can see that I've already been playing around with it to test out previously. So this is my trade that just went through. And this is trading against other users that's using the platform. So other users that are looking to purchase ETH or USDT. At the moment, it's USDT, but it's going to be USDC. We're not going to be listing USDT. Essentially, you're trading against those other users on the platform. And once they accept your trade, or once their bid is the same as yours, it will complete your order. So if we go back to your wallet, we can see that we should have some USDT if the order went through. It doesn't look like it went through yet. And here's some of those bugs we talked about. Some more bugs. That's great. Okay, so order history. Okay, so it is complete. So we should see it show up in the wallet. Didn't show up yet. But typically what's going to happen is once the order is actually closed, I guess it's not closed yet, your USDT will be available to trade and you can now go and buy ETH. So what we'll do is we will put instructions together on how to obtain the currency. Once you start building, or I guess obtaining your currency, you'll see your portfolio update as well. And once you start trading, you'll start building your history. And your data will start to build as well on the chain and on the platform. So just wanted to give you guys a quick update on where we are with the platform. As I mentioned, Chris will give you a bigger update on where we are with timelines and what our expectations are moving forward, and also some other interesting avenues that we're looking to explore. So with that, I will close it off and pass it off to Chris.
Thank you, Neville. Appreciate the update. That's a great one. All right. So happy New Year, Steam team. Truly appreciate you guys as always joining us, especially on a Friday. As I said, happy New Year. I mean, as always, we wish you guys nothing short of the best for you and your loved ones. Last year was definitely quite an eventful one, and we're definitely looking to continue to bring that drive to the table that we've been bringing, and allowing this for us to be a very prosperous one for all of us, right? So as stated by Verif, my name is Chris Beckford, and for those who don't know me, I am the co-CEO and head of infrastructure here at Steam Exchange. So hopping right into some infrastructure updates on the exchange side of the ball, and as you see the information that's provided by Neville, some updates have been made on that front. As always, our teams continue to make extensive progress. Now, despite some of the very stressful situations our external development team in Ukraine is facing on the daily basis, they continue to stand extremely tall, stare in the face of adversity, and plug away, as you guys can see. And by that, we truly appreciate everything that they're doing for the team. So some of the key updates here are visual, some are not to you. The ones as described by Neville, those are more of the visual ones. You can kind of see the UI has been polished off there for the day and night mode, not only for the PC, but as well as the mobile as well too. And more information will follow on that as well. We've polished the chart views you see, and we've optimized the mobile responsiveness for the applications. Subscriptions have been updated, which was a huge one for the team. And there's been some UI fixes for the trading functionality and for the wallets as well, which is kind of what Neville displayed there. And now on the back end, again, some of this stuff is not visible for you, but I'll just go through some of the stuff so you can kind of understand where the team has been plugging away. So there's been updates and polishing done for the records for the operational logics. The team has introduced new bot configurations and activations for the market settings, tracking mechanisms, and tracking mechanisms have been added for our market overviews, which again is another big one in terms of us being able to continue to track the market and do the appropriate analysis and provide that competitive pricing, which is what we want to make sure that we're doing on a daily basis. And we've added additional information for our health check system in terms of the requests and events inside the nodes and the microservices. On the DevOps side of the ball, there's been adoption of configurations, which are kind of supporting security policies, another big one. And then there's been additional testing for the compatibility for the system for different functionality and interfacing with different external exchanges. On the QA side of the ball, obviously, you know, those teams continue to stress test the platform and all the new parameters as they're adding new things. Sometimes when you add and introduce things in the environment, they may break, which is quite normal. So, you know, they stress test them and then revise them accordingly. Our admin functionality is at its tail end. Last I heard, 99%. That's more for us, but our admin system is where, you know, we control the environment, and obviously that's a huge one for our internal teams. And then, you know, we have the continuous development of automated testing for end user compatibility. So a lot of moving pieces here. There's no shortage of work, as you guys can see. And, you know, there will be a course of additional optimization, which, you know, teams will have to make. And these optimizations will help to further align us to our standards and our strategic goals and expectations. So, you know, as the weeks progress, we'll continue to keep you guys abreast with these updates as we progress, you know, through the coming weeks. Now, in spirit of honoring, you know, our word on migration timelines, right? We've had extensive discussions, right? We know, you know, that last year we were faced with some hurdles, and, you know, internally we've had a lot of extensive discussions around, you know, how we can continue to step over these hurdles, right? And not play the waiting game, right? A little funny saying that I heard back, you know, growing up is, you know, too much weight might break the scale, right? So what we're looking to do is, you know, look at ways of getting creative and getting more in front of the ball per se, right? So from this junction, you know, we know that there are 4 key items to bring this off to fruition, right? In terms of our migration plan, right? We have one being the Rails network. The second one is the Launchpad, right? The third one, Block Explorer, and also the fourth one being our swap functionality. So what you're looking at in terms of our platform that's displayed on the screen right now is the, you know, end state in terms of, you know, where the home will be for the Steam Exchange, quick swap, advanced trading functionality, all that said. Now, with that being said, we're looking to introduce a safe and interim, and let me you know, reiterate that word, interim, right? Interim swap solution into the ecosystem, right? This will allow, you know, users to migrate and also trade within the Rails network, right? And, you know, this is for us will continue to be a hot topic, you know, on a daily basis. And we're looking to, you know, have that plan formulated and brought to the table, right? With this formalization, you know, we want to make sure that there's a high degree of confidence and rigor built into this plan. And once we do have this formalized, what we're looking to do is present it according to the community by way of a scheduled AMA. Not only that, but because, you know, we take pride in always saying that this is not our project, this is your project, right? So we're not just presenting it and saying, here's what we're going to do. We're going to present it, again, with a high degree of confidence and rigor, and, you know, present it to you and to get your feedback and your opinion by way of a vote, right? So that's something that we're looking to do, because we really want to be, you know, continue to put the pedal to the metal. Obviously, you know, we're taking the appropriate precautions to make sure that everything's done right? We're not trying to rush things, but in the sake of honoring our migration timelines, this is what we've been talking about. So we definitely want to have that brought to the table. So stay tuned for that. There will be more information as the weeks progress there. Now, taking a step over to the Rails network blockchain, as Neville talked about earlier, I mean, I think there's no surprise that the tracks have been laid and bolted to the ground. I mean, with all the previous demos and beta testing of the swaps with the Testnet native coin, etc., it's there. You know it's there. However, it's one thing to visualize it mentally, though, because even if you're swapping to a native coin, you know, where's that transaction? You know, what's happening, right? So it's one thing to visualize it mentally, and it's a totally different thing to get your fingers on it, to the tip of your fingers. So Earlier on in the call, Neville alluded to the fact of the Block Explorer, which we're very happy about all the progression, great work that's been done by our internal dev team to get this here. So with that being said, I will flip the mic back over to Neville, and he'll take you through one of many demos, or I should say the first iteration demo for the future Rails Network Explorer. Cheers.
Yes. So this is the Block Explorer. We did drop a couple of snippets during the week. This is the first version of it. It's very bare bones. There's a lot of modules that we haven't turned on yet. For example, contract validation and whatnot. But I will go through kind of what the typical trader or investor would look at when they're in a Block Explorer. So this is the landing page. This is what you see when you come to the site. Like I mentioned, very early stage Explorer, but we wanted to make sure we got the data in that was relevant to, for example, like Chris mentioned, if we were to do our migration based on what we discuss internally and then the feedback we get from the community, we would want to make sure that at least the bare minimums were online for you. So with that, I do want to show you kind of what we're looking at. So on the landing page, you see some high-level stats. You get to see what the average gas is at the moment. So we have it set to very low since we're on Testnet and we're not really pushing any transactions at the moment. As you can see, there's only 4 daily transactions, and that's kind of been consistent for the last month. You can see what our average block time is. When we demoed it earlier, previously, it was at around 16.5, but it slowly worked its way down to 10.3. It tells you how many total transactions there are on the chain, how many blocks we're currently at, what the block height is, and how many addresses. This data was actually pretty surprising to me because we get a lot of feedback, or not feedback rather, but comments in the chat about, there's 300 people online, but there's only 5 people chatting or 10 people chatting. This is actually a good representation of the active members in our community. There's always going to be people kind of standing on the sidelines who are holders and are just not interested in chatting on a daily basis. But there was 310 individual wallet interactions on our testnet. So people may have done the testnet claim. They may have claimed faucet currency from our faucet, or they created wallets to deploy contracts. So this is actually pretty, I was pretty surprised to see this number because, at some points I did share the same sentiment. I said, hey, there's over 300 people online. There's only a couple people chatting. But, as we start looking at data, things start to look more clear. So without further ado, let's just start to jump right into it. So from the homepage, you get to see, of course, this data, and we can plug in some more, and we will as we go. You get to see the last few blocks that were mined. You get to see the data behind the blocks, so we'll get into that in a second, who the miner was, how many transactions were in the blocks, how long ago it was. I didn't refresh this page before I got to it. It was already on the screen, so this was from about 48 minutes ago, but we'll see more relevant data in a second. You get to see the transactions. So this is just block data. So every time a miner mines a transaction or block rather, or validates a block, it'll generate a transaction, and that's what you're seeing. So there's no actual transactions going through at the moment. We did have bots set up trading on the chain to stress test it, but that's now turned off. From here, you get to come in and look at the block data. So you get to look at all the blocks, all the unco blocks. And this is pretty cool too. You don't get to see this too often, but if there's ever an issue on the chain and we have to stop the chain for whatever reason, and then we have to fork the last known working block, that's called a reorg. You get to actually see that and look at the block and look at the data from that block when we ever do that, if we ever have to do that. For transaction data, you get to see what transactions are validated and what transactions are pending, and then of course verified contracts. So we'll get into some of it right now. So we'll get into blocks. And hopefully it shows more. Here we go, 20 seconds ago. So these are the blocks. It shows you the last mined blocks on the chain. It tells you who the miner was, what the gas limit was, how much gas was used for that particular block. If we want more information, we can go into and see who the miner was. Over here, you can see the miner has executed 10 transactions. This is all the blocks or the transactions that they've been involved with. You can filter these blocks from to and from, and you can also download your data. So just like other good block explorers, you should always have access to your data and to sort it and filter it how you'd like. Internal transactions, there should be 0 because there's no trading happening at the moment, so that'll be 0. This is a cool tab, coin balance history. Over here, you get to see if you're a miner, you don't always have to have the pool online, And if your pool is local to your workstation, you may not want to or may not be able to log into it from wherever you are. But over here at a high level, you can see what your progress is from a coin balance perspective. So this particular wallet is one of our infrastructure wallets. So you can see its balance is fairly high. It is one of the few wallets or pieces of infrastructure that is mining. So you can see that it gained during this block 2 SteamX, et cetera, et cetera. So it seems like it's consistently gaining 2 SteamX. There was a 4 SteamX gain over here, but it gives you the updated running balance of your particular setup, and then also shows you at a high level what your gains look like from a token holding perspective. You can also look at the number of blocks that were validated. If you want to see your particular blocks for your wallet or a particular miner, if you're interested in their wallet and their mining activity. At a high level, again, just like previously, it shows you the data, how many bytes were in that block, how long the block was, how many transactions, etc. A couple of fun things. You can copy it, the address to send it to somebody, copy it with the link. And you can also scan a QR code if you really would like to. So that's for blocks. Uncles and fork blocks are similar. We're going to go into transactions. So here it gives you the transaction hash. It tells you who it's from and who it's to. And if you go into the hash, it'll show you the relevant data. So just like other good explorers that we're used to, we wanted to make sure that this particular explorer had the same, functions and features. So there's not too much of a learning curve. So over here you have your hash. You have the timestamp, you know what block it was, you know what it was confirmed by, how long it took to confirm, the value of the transaction, what the fee was for that particular transaction, and then you have more in-depth data at the bottom. You have your input. You can look at the logs. You can look at the trace. And if there were any state changes, you can see state changes as well. So you can see here that it was a miner. This was the balance before. This is the balance after. Then we go to the tokens. You can see all the deployed tokens onto this chain. You can see that Ice and Mark had a lot of fun. A lot of other community members as well. I know that one of our community members is Crypto Carly here, Samuel here. So we have a lot of fun tokens that were deployed to test out. When we first launched the testnet, Ice even went ahead and created some NFTs. And then, of course, we see this TeamX token here. So this will now show you all the holders of CMX. It'll show you what the percentage of the market cap is. You can look at how many transactions were sent for that particular wallet. So if there's any information that you're looking for, you can click into the wallet and you can find that relevant information for that particular wallet. Verified contracts. This is going to be where whoever deploys a contract to the Rails network. When you look at other explorers like BSC Scan, you see a little check mark beside the contract. They've verified their contracts. This will list all the verified contracts on the chain. So you can then look at the address of the contract. You can see the balance, the transactions, etc., which compiler they used, and whatnot. So that's kind of where we are with the Explorer so far. It is still a work in progress. We are still working on clearing up some of the kinks. What we did was we wanted to make accessibility as easy as possible. So this is Testnet. So in Testnet, you would have access to, of course, the Rails network documentation. Because you're a developer, you're going to be using Testnet. So you're going to maybe want to reference our documentation, quick access to our faucet, and then, of course, switching over to our mainnet. We also did a one-click add for the chain. It's not active at the moment, but once you are connected to the actual mainnet, you can click the add button. It'll add the chain to your wallet. If you're using MetaMask, we know Trust Wallet has recently added functionality for RPCs as well, so we'll also add a Trust Wallet one shortly. Over here, you have this Steam Exchange information, our website, our white paper, and of course our MSB. So before we were able to kind of demonstrate that the blockchain was functioning, it was of course taken with a grain of salt, and rightfully so. But now you can kind of see firsthand what's happening on the chain. You can see the chain is actually live, blocks are actually being validated, and once we start playing more heavily with beta, and the community takes a more active role in playing with beta, you'll actually start to see real transactions go back and forth. Again, this is linked to our Rails network testnet. Once we are ready to launch, this will be forked over to our mainnet, and of course the data will be net new. There'll be no data, and we'll get to see all this data kind of run up as we go. So that was kind of the demo in a nutshell. Of course, I'm sure people have questions about it, and I hope you do. We would be more than happy to answer them. And with that, I'll pass it back to Viraf to continue with the AMA.
Perfect. Thanks, Neville. I just have to say, wow, it's honestly great to see this all come to fruition, and in my mind, at least, make the link about how it all ties together. So once again, thank you, Neville and Chris, for guiding us through that. And to our community, we were glad, to be able to showcase some of these demos and touch upon a few key initiatives that will be channeling new growth and expansion in 2023. And as Neville mentioned, we will also be putting together some resources, including an instructional document to help you guys with the trading interface and how you can access and trade with those Testnet tokens. And as always, guys, right from the get-go, we've been open to feedback. So please keep it coming. Suggestions, thoughts, ideas. Tell us what you liked, what you disliked, and maybe what you perhaps had a differing opinion on. We're all ears. But I think at this time, it is a good segue to take us into the Q&A session. I hope everyone had some time to think about a few questions. I did have a couple in my DMs, but I think let's maybe start off with the open mic. So would anyone like to go first? Please raise your hand and we can take it from there. Okay, I guess we did a really good job of explaining things, but no worries. Maybe we can progress into one of the text questions I received. And then if anyone has any questions, please feel free to raise your hand again, like I said, and we will unmute you. So the first question I received, are the interim solutions only for the DEX? Are there any potential security risks there?
Yeah, great question. So the interim solution is definitely going to come with its rigor, like I said, right? We're not looking to just rush to the table and release something for the sake of it, right? We've performed extensive testing, and we will continue in parallel, not only internally but externally with community members as well to kind of continue to pressure test that. Now, the interim solution in itself, the DEX, while the DEX is one portion, it's much bigger than that too, right? Because it allows us to get to a state where the developers that have reached out to us with said interest to develop on our blockchain, they can start going ahead and developing, right? So it's multiple folds in this here. One, yes, to support migration, get users, into the weeds and trading and stuff like that. But it's not just about the trading, right? It's about the development aspect as well too. And again, circling back to security, 100%. We're not looking to release anything with any potential security risks. We want to make sure that everything's covered to a T. And again, continue to promote that safe environment, which we continue to live by.
Thanks so much for that, Chris. There is a follow-up question to that. So it goes like this. If the community votes for the interim solution, will the TuneX solution still be available later, or is that off the table?
Great question. Yeah, so the TuneX solution, again, like I said, is the final landing zone. We will continue to develop that in parallel. We are pretty close, and we know we have some tweaks and optimizations to make to get to the final state. But again, this is just the interim solution, so we can kind of get out of that mode where we're waiting, right? And not to say that we're waiting, because the TuneX team, they are developing on a daily basis, and they're working their tails off over there 100%. But in terms of more or less you guys waiting, right? Again, we want to get you guys into the environment as we said we would, and gonna get you going. And then in parallel to that, we will continue to optimize and clean up what we need to clean up, and then release the final home state. Now, in terms of the DEX, the interim DEX, likely, that will be replaced by the obviously SteamX DEX. But it could very well be an environment to some extent, right? We'll have further internal discussions about that one as well.
Perfect, thank you. The next question is, will there be any advantages for large volume traders on the Steam Exchange DEX? 'Cause, 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 'cause
Not sure the best way to answer that in terms of advantages, right?
I
I think
think they mean
that's
incentives.
like incentives, right?
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
what they
So
meant.
yeah, so that's something that continues. We've revisited that multiple times. Obviously, there has to be some kind of incentivization for that per se. As much as we obviously see this as a fair playing field, right? We want to treat whether you're coming in with $10 or $1,000 or even bigger. We want to make it a level playing field, but at some point there is this incentivization, and that's something that we have not locked in fully at this point. So I think that's something that we'll continue to keep our ears to the wall in terms of what we're hearing from feedback from people, see what works best for the environment, as well as kind of making it balanced as well too. So ongoing discussions, long-winded one to say.
Perfect. Thanks for the clarity there, Chris. I'm just going to look at the voice chat if there's anyone. Okay, not at the moment. So I do have a last question via text. On the DEX side, are derivatives and pools and other aspects possible in the future?
So that's definitely a good question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so good question. So on the deck side, Chris mentioned builders, right? So have developers come onto the chain and start building on our chain. So we're not going to be offering I guess directly derivatives and futures and etc. But if there's ever a project that comes across our table that is looking to build, pools and swaps that are similar to what you're used to on other chains, if they pass our vetting process, then we would entertain definitely the possibility of them launching through the chain and offering those functionalities. Just to touch a little bit more on the interim solution, it's not like Chris said, it's not the hard and fast end state. It's just to facilitate the migration for you guys, the investors and the holders, so you guys can get into our ecosystem, start trading on the network. But more importantly than that, it's definitely to start building, right? We need people to kind of migrate their existing projects to our network or bridge to our network or build net new projects on our network. That's where we're going to see the most significant growth because when you invested into our project, you had to purchase BNB to buy TuneX. Likewise, to invest into projects that we launch, you would have to purchase TuneX to buy into those projects. So that's kind of the biggest growth factor that we're going to have when it comes to building and I guess evolving and growing our chain. So a lot of consideration to put into place and a lot of thought for sure on your part on which route we should take. So like Chris mentioned, we're definitely going to put together some form of proposal for you with both options, pros and cons. We're going to assess the hell out of them and make sure that we've addressed all the pros and cons that we found. And then, of course, it's up to you guys as the investors. And this is where, for the first time, we're kind of saying, hey, the ball's a little bit in your court to come back and say, you know what, maybe we should just wait for TuneX and start building on the chain rather than migrating today and et cetera, or let's migrate and then build and let TuneX continue in the background. So that's kind of what we envisioned for this, I guess, decision that we would make together as a community and a team. Viraf, did you have any more questions come across?
I did, Neville. Just briefly touching upon the migration. The question is the migration still planned to be a one-click gateway?
Yeah, so so what we have currently from a claim perspective, that is going to evolve a little bit with more security gateways. The current version of it only has one check to see if you've ever claimed before. Of course, the final state is going to have a lot more hurdles for your wallet to get through to claim. So it's a lot more secure. No one can accidentally claim twice, etc. and whatnot. So, yep, the claim process will be similar from your perspective, but from our perspective, it's going to change significantly from the back end.
Perfect. Thanks for that clarity, Neville. I do see Craig has his hand up, so I'm just going to unmute you, Craig. Please feel free to ask a question. Hey, Craig, are you there? You are unmuted. So whenever you're ready.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. How you doing?
What it is, it's just a question regarding one of Neville's posts. It says, doing our due diligence on it with some of the government agencies we built relationships with to see what its viability and interest would be, and then we will announce it. I'm just wondering, what was the interest the government showed? Can you discuss anything regarding that?
Yeah, for sure. So there was a lot of excitement. Blockchain is a very hot topic, especially in Ontario at the moment, and blockchain technology in general. So the team that we work with, or that we've built a network with, are very pro blockchain. So one of the people, she is very partnership network centric, and that's who we leverage for finding these relationships. And the other person is specific to blockchain technology. So our Ministry of Ontario Economic Growth has a specific blockchain department dedicated to blockchain technology and fintech startups. So they're going to be working with us on finding, for example, so the first resource will help us find people that are interested in testing this technology. And of course, the other person would help us develop it. So they would find resources looking at, yeah, you know what, this is a good idea, let's build it. So we didn't mention this. This is actually going to be part of a new division that we're going to start at Steam Exchange, a completely new entity. It's going to be a not-for-profit entity. So anything that we develop in this particular silo, it'll come at no cost to the users or the end users of this particular technology. So we're not going to go and charge hospitals to use this technology. They'll never have to pay a transaction fee or any kind of gas. We would find a way to cover that, whether it be through our revenue from our actual ecosystem or, like I mentioned, a tokenized project on the network dedicated to this particular cause. So we definitely want to embark on more not-for-profit initiatives because definitely that's where the focus is going in the space for crypto, right? And there's a lot of focus on making money. There's not enough focus on giving it back. So we're definitely looking at leveraging that particular mindset.
Yeah, it's definitely a great marketing strategy.
Yep, I hope I answered your question, Craig.
Thanks.
Thanks, Craig.
Yeah, there was some great alpha drop by Neville there, and a great question from Craig as well. Thank you. So I do have the tail end of our session here. We do have one final question, and I will preface this by saying that we are working through the process of this interim solution, right? But the question goes like this. Will the vote for the interim solution be based off of how much SteamX you have, or does everyone have one equal vote?
So we're definitely going to keep the vote as fair as possible. It's for one, it's not going to be an anonymous vote, so your username will be known for which way you voted. And then secondly, no, I don't think holdings would matter because from our perspective, there's a lot of people that are kind of waiting on the sidelines to see where we kind of go. I know a lot of people are interested in the project still. They haven't invested yet, but they're on the sidelines because of some of our delays, for example. They should also have a vote in which direction this goes. Of course, with the vote being said and done, that's kind of when we're going to put the timelines on the table, and we can definitely explore the viability of launching and migrating sooner than later. This solution was kind of our hot topic, like Chris mentioned, for the last, even before the new year. We've been sitting on the information for a while now because we weren't sure how to commit to it, especially because we hadn't met with TuneX. Because they were in the heat of their situation there, but we did manage to have our first year meeting with them earlier this week. So that's why we were able to kind of come to the table today during the AMA and kind of shed more light on where we are from a viability and moving forward perspective.
Perfect. Thanks for the clarity there, Neville. I think with that, we are at the tail end session of our AMA. To our community, we thank you all for your time. And for tuning in. We hope you liked what you saw, the demos, etc. We will be putting out, like we said, instructions about how you can access and interact with those products. But on our end, the grind continues. The work does not stop. And we hope everyone has a pleasant weekend ahead. We are looking forward to connecting with you all on our next AMA. Until then, stay well. And we're signing off full steam ahead.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody, for
Cheers.
joining. Take care.